reason that I'm here is because the club is seeking change.
He said, well, whether you come or not, you're going to see a completely different Spurs team under me.
My hope and my desire and what I'm going to try and do is give our supporters hope and belief that we're going to embark on something special.
Welcome into the Tottenham Depot. I am your host, Andrew. You can follow me at @Stedka. You can follow us at Tottenham Depot. This is episode 206 on this very fine November 17th, 2024. We've got a lot to discuss on this podcast, and we are going to dive right in. Start by throwing out to Scott. He is at Scott G. Bird. Scott, what's going on, man?
Not too much. A little bit better than last week. Not perfect in the sporting world, but Iowa State.
Yeah, let's do it. Let's do our Iowa State check-in. Yeah, let's get the Iowa State update.
Iowa State got the big win last night against Cincinnati. That was required. Obviously, not a great result on the women's side, but the men's side, we're not able to lose to Southampton or whoever we're going to lose to next. Well, we'll get to that, obviously, but so I appreciate the men for choosing not to play this weekend. That was super helpful.
Yeah, surprisingly enough, the men may have lost a little bit on the international break side, despite not losing a match. We will certainly dive in to a lot of that. Caroline is also here at CG Stefko. Kaz, what's going on with you?
Not too much. I've just been enjoying different American soccer playoffs and enjoying being a neutral for once. Just pure chaos. The NWSL playoff game that happened yesterday was just a wonderful game. And I'm happy for the Spirit. I think they deserve to come away with the win. So, yeah, just looking forward to the last weekend. The finals coming up next weekend.
Love that for you. Love that for us. We have got, like I said, a lot to discuss on the pod, so I don't want to delay too much. But before we get into talking about Tottenham, I do want to remind you to head over to digitalspurs.com for your Tottenham merch. We are proud to be partnered up with Digital Spurs this season. We're talking t-shirts, hoodies like the one you're seeing me wear if you're watching us on the YouTube. Love this hoodie. It is officially hoodie season in Arizona. Like, the temperature has dropped. I know like everybody thinks Arizona, it's very hot. Woke up this morning, it was in the 30s. It was very, very chilly. Fahrenheit, that is, for our international listeners. Very close to the freezing mark here in Arizona. I was grateful to have my Digital Spurs Tottenham hoodie to rock. Go to digitalspurs.com to find your new favorite merch. Let them know that we here at the Tottenham Depot sent you. Guys, let's just get into it. The North London Derby occurred yesterday at the Tottenham Hotspur Stadium, and it did not go very well for Tottenham Hotspur as Spurs lose 3-0 to Arsenal in what was a match that was kind of almost reminiscent of a week ago against Manchester City, where it was, I don't have any other word other than it was an ass kicking. And we kind of talked a little bit about the Manchester City match in the context of, oh boy, like there's a gap here. And we saw a lot more of that gap on Saturday at the Tottenham Hotspur Stadium in front of, I think, a reported like 25,000 fans. It seemed like a pretty good crowd at the stadium, which is a good thing. We like that. But it's the second straight super lopsided defeat for Spurs Women, who have just 7 points from their first 8 WSL matches this season. I do want to talk about the game itself, but boy, just on a grander context, Caroline, this was not pretty.
No, and I think that if we're, being realistic, we were never likely to pick up points in this fixture, despite it being, a home game at the big stadium. I just think this season it really has become clear that we're not really keeping pace with kind of the progress that we made last season. And I think part of that is some of the changes to the squad. Obviously, we've lost a few key players, Grace Clinton and Celine Bizet going to United. Kit Graham still with the squad, but has a torn ACL, so not able to contribute, unfortunately, this season. I just think it's going to be tough for a little bit, I think is what I'm trying to say. And fans might need to brace themselves for, this feeling like the true sort of rebuild season. Because I think last campaign ended up being pretty positive, like definitely exceeded my expectations for Robert Villaham's first season in charge. And now we're kind of getting to the point where, okay, reality check. The squad needs some work. The tactics need a little bit of work. But yeah, it still hurt, to watch us lose 3-0 at home to this team.
Especially when you fall down as quick as they did. A goal from Alessia Russo in the second minute, and it just kind of like I said, it was that's why it was so similar to last week against Manchester City when Bunny Shaw scored so early. I believe that was in the first minute. And it just when you're behind the 8 ball like that, it's hard to climb back into a game. And obviously there was a lot of hype surrounding this game because it was the same fixture that Spurs beat Arsenal in last season, and you would have loved to see a repeat, but it was just never going to happen with the form of these two teams. Scott, where are you at with this? This was obviously not pretty, but it, like Caroline said, I think that there's a recognition from cooler heads that this is a rebuild, and this is like the new faces have not fully been integrated, even though we are 8 matches into the season just because of injury and a myriad of other things. Where do you sit with this right now?
I'm probably a little bit more frustrated than some. We talked about this in the chat after the match a little bit yesterday, but I'm concerned with a lack of progression and a lack of plan that I see at times. And again, I understand we've lost key players, and we brought in new players who we hope to pick up that slack, but that does take time. But then I look at the fact that we've gone down within the first couple of minutes of the last 2 matches against greater opponents, like we've talked about, and that's not quality. That's not squad turnover. That's just something more deeply rooted, and I'm not going to sit here and just speculate as to what that is. But in those types of matches, you've got to give yourself a chance, let's say at halftime, to be in the match, right, and have something to play for. And we've gone into halftime knowing it's over in these last 2 matches. I talked about it a little bit last week. I think at times I see, not all the time, but at times I see Beth deployed in strange positions. We seem to be a little bit lost on the pitch. I said yesterday in the chat, on the men's side, we're shit, but I see the progression and I see what we're trying to do. And on the women's side, I don't see as much of that at times, right? And again, different stages of the project. I mean, maybe not in terms of length of time, right? But when you look at the squad turnover on the women's side versus the men's, it is a little bit different, and there's things that have to be considered there. But I'm just starting to worry that the plan isn't working like we see that it probably will end up working on the men's side. And the more we continue to drop points, again, 7 points from an available 24 points is a really rough start to the season. And at this point, if something doesn't change, we're going to see ourselves well within the heart of the relegation battle for sure at the end of the season. And I'm not saying change is in like sack Robert or anything. Right? I'm just saying if something doesn't change, whatever that is, we're gonna find ourselves in a pretty tough spot, and relegation would be incredibly detrimental to the squad this season. That just can't happen. So there's a lot of work to do.
I completely agree with you on, relegation would be detrimental. That's I feel like an obvious statement. But I'm glad you bring it up, because obviously this club did have to fight it a couple of seasons ago and was able to stay up. But I'm not there yet. I don't think it's that dire. And I think that's actually just purely down to the rest of the WSL. I think this team still has enough talent to stave off the bottom. I feel like the gap between the top and the bottom is so enormous. It's much wider than it is on the men's side of things in the Premier League, where I feel like a relegation type of team can beat a top of the table type of team on any given day. And there are more matches, obviously, because it's a larger league, in order to make that okay. In the WSL, there is way less room for error. I want to get your guys' response to this comment we got from Ben Richardson on Blue Sky. And by the way, I add parenthetically, we are on Blue Sky, folks. Tottenham Depot, search it over there. I know a lot of folks have migrated from Twitter X over to Blue Sky in the last week. We've been on there for a while. We post the pod up there. We try to share some thoughts there as well. We're all over the socials, wherever you are, Threads, any place, search Tottenham Depot, at Tottenham Depot, we're there. But Ben Richardson made a similar comparison to what you're talking about, Scott. He said, similar to the men, there's been some good results and nice looking passages of play last season that had me thinking that we were more advanced in the project than we actually were. But unless there's morally dodgy stuff going on, both coaches should be given at least 2 full seasons before a serious review. And otherwise you go back to square one. I 100% believe that and back it. And I think that Robert, like, I know that there will be questions because that's just what happens. And it's in our nature as football fans to question managers during bad runs of form. We see it all the time on the men's side. We why not treat it the same on the women's side? You absolutely have to. But I do think there's the major difference in those two things. For me, it actually goes above the manager's head, Caroline. And we saw some reporting this week that I think is a little bit, I don't think it's very sketchy reporting. I think it's solid reporting, but it's sketchy in the nature of where is the investment coming? And basically, can you fill me in on a lot of that? Because you were filling me in last night about it. And like, basically Tottenham are not up to snuff with the other clubs that they're trying to chase in terms of the actual investment on the pitch and with players, right?
Right. This reporting that came from, some different sources at The Athletic, so definitely reputable, I would say, is basically that we're not even keeping pace with the investment of some of the other mid-table teams, let alone, the very top teams that were already struggling to get up to that level of play. Basically, the reporting was that the only teams who are investing less in their playing squads than Spurs Women are Crystal Palace, who just got promoted this season, so that would make sense, and Everton and West Ham, who, notably both of their managers, Rhiannon Skinner and Brian Sorensen, have been very vocal about being unhappy with, the support they've gotten from their ownership and their boards in terms of, investing in the playing squad. So for us to be kind of in that bucket is super concerning to me. And, obviously we know that as a club, Tottenham could be investing more in the women's team. Like, that's just a fact. And I think we need to be honest about that and how disappointing it is that it feels like they're continually just letting down, the women's side of the club. And I think specifically, if we're going to talk about, the investment that could have been done this season, in the summer window, it was pretty widely known that the club was willing to, throw the proverbial bank at Grace Clinton and, secure her contract at any cost. And of course, that was out of our control because United had no interest in selling whatsoever. So that is what it is. But we didn't see that, money that apparently existed for her transfer go to anything else. We picked up players on free transfers mostly. So, again, those kind of like opportunistic signings. And it's not to say that some of them aren't going to be, meaningful contributors to the squad. I think Haley Rosso, obviously unlucky to have an injury early on, but now she's back in the squad and hopefully going to kick on. And Matea Roth, I think she's going to solve some of our creativity issues when she gets back from her injury, but she's out for a lot longer than even Rosso.
Right.
But then you also look at a player like Anna Chicky, who I don't want to be like, horribly rude about, but I just don't think she's at the level that we are looking for. And that really felt like a panic buy in the wake of Kit tearing her ACL.
Right.
So I feel like the investment has been, inadequate, but also not targeted enough. And it's kind of widely known too that in the women's game, like the scouting apparatus is really weak. Even a club like Spurs, Robert Villaham is still heavily involved in, contributing to that scouting, which is why we have ended up with a lot of players from the Swedish league that he knows from his time there. And obviously it's not good to be limiting ourselves to like one market primarily, when we know there are a lot of players elsewhere in the world who are really talented and could, really help.
And I want to be clear, when I talk about financial investment for the women's side, I'm not just talking about taking that big pile of money that you were prepared to drop on Grace Clinton. And, it's almost like you say, okay, well, they went and got a bunch of free I don't want them to just spend willy nilly. The financial investment has to come with exactly what you're talking about. It's the scouting apparatus, because you can't rely on Robert Villaham to do it all. Like, there needs to be the support staff, just like there is on the men's side, in order to go out, identify players, identify targets for the manager. Like, it's very kind of cloudy as to where that's actually coming from, where that information is coming from. And this is how you build a club. I mean, the bigger clubs, Arsenal, Man City, Chelsea, all these bigger clubs on the women's side have that apparatus in place, and they're bringing in high level recruits bringing them through the ranks too. And we're starting to see that build a little bit on this on Spurs end, but to hear that it's financially not being supported in the way that you would want it to is super frustrating. And I know there was also discussion just about support from ownership and whether or not they were even attending this match yesterday, the big North London derby at the stadium. Like all of this stuff is kind of swirling around, and it's, when the defeats start to roll in the way that they have, it creates a snowball. And I don't really want to see this turn into, well, this manager can't perform a miracle with what he's been given, so let's sack him and try and find another person who can. I don't think it's going down that road, but I certainly don't want it to go down that road in any way, shape, or form.
Yeah, I think, and I really am hesitant to say this because I do not want to gravitate towards the purple and gold brigade, but Tottenham has a history of not being as interested in investing in winning football as they are in investing in the greater brand of Tottenham Hotspur and continuing to grow that brand that is Tottenham Hotspur. And I don't think it's crazy to say that the ownership group doesn't believe that trophies can be won at this point. And so they're just, not going to do what's required. And again, this is a very blanketed thing to say because there's so many nuances to this, but just doesn't feel that they're at a point where investment will lead to greater things. Right. And that's sad and it's frustrating. You could take one of the transfers on the men's side and absolutely break women's football with it. Right. And I know this is going to be a nuts thing to say, but you could go and pay Bunny Shaw 3 times what she's making at Chelsea or at Man City. Right. And not to say she would come, but the point is you could do a lot with the money that's available at the club. But then I also look at the men's side and we're starting to make investment and there's structure there towards the scouting that you all are talking about. But everyone we brought in this window too, young, talented, and we want to paint the picture that these folks are brought in to build up the Ange Postecoglou system and get us where we need to be. But when I look at Archie Gray, when I look at Wilson Odebear, when I look at Yang Min Hyuk, every reason to think that in the back of Levy's head, 3 years from now, these guys could be worth triple what we just paid for them, right? And boom, we make money off of it. So I still don't firmly believe that even on the men's side, things are where we want them to be as fans when it comes to investment. And unfortunately, I to bring it all back to my point here, I feel like we're a very long way away from the club being interested in really investing in the women's squad. And for the Tottenham fan, especially the newer Tottenham fans, this is kind of how this club works. And again, I'm not in the purple and gold brigade. I'm not asking Levy to sell the club, or Enoch rather, to sell the club. But at the same time, I'm never going to expect us to fully invest in winning trophies the way that other clubs do at Tottenham, whatever that means.
But, just to pick up on what you said, Scott, the thing that makes it more frustrating on the women's side is that, like you said, it would not take that much investment relative to the men's side for us to be a really successful team. And it just seems like the motivation to do so has not been there. And it's tough because we actually, were positioned to take advantage of some of the, improvements we had made, first under Rhiannon Skinner, and then we kind of fumbled that bag. And then obviously we had a great season last year in Robert's first season. And we never build on it. And I think that's where my frustration is mostly laying right now. Because, there was a time when players were looking at our club as one of the better destinations in terms of we have top class training facilities that weren't really present at other clubs. Obviously Tottenham as a brand name holds some cachet, but we're just not taking advantage of it. And I feel like we're letting this opportunity slip because, the top teams in the league who have been serious about their women's sides for, several seasons upon seasons. And even if you look at a team like United, who didn't join the league until the same season that we did and had literally just reformed their team the season before, you can see that the impact that investment makes because they are where they are and we are where we are. So
yeah, No, I completely agree. I do think, like, if someone asks, is it more on Robert or more on the club? It's wholeheartedly more on the club for me than Robert. But at the same time, I'll also say our patterns of play are gone. I mean, we talked about it so many podcasts last year, even when results didn't go our way, that the patterns of play were fantastic, and we could see everything that was happening, and we could see the growth, and we just look lost. And again, we are for sure looking under the microscope of Man City and Arsenal, which are two very talented teams, and it was unlikely that things were going to go our way in either of these matches. But like I said, the patterns of play are gone. And I said it in last week's show, any player that receives the ball just looks like they have no clue as to what they're going to do with it when they receive it, right? And that's such a simplistic viewpoint. But if you go back to playing any sport at the age of 5 years old, the coach just pounds into your head, know what you're going to do when you receive the ball, over and over and over. And we don't seem to have any concept of a plan right now. And that's also concerning. And I don't think you can always chalk that up to just losing a couple key players. I think professional athletes should be a little bit more prepared in these situations than what I'm seeing too. And so it is concerning, but no doubt about it, the investment is not there, and that factors in for sure.
Unfortunately, I think we already had an episode titled that was Concepts of a Plan for a different reason earlier this season. So we can't use that one again, but my goodness, that made me chuckle when you just said Concepts of a Plan. Let's bring it back to that conversation though. The on the pitch thing, because like, yes, the off field financial thing is a big part of this, but on the pitch, when we talk about approach and things like that, we've always made a lot of comparisons between the men's and women's sides in terms of the managers and how they want to play. They want to run those patterns of play as you talk about. They have not just concepts of a plan, but a plan in place to go. It's Bobby ball as we've termed it here on the pod, and like they want to get after it. But the gap between their level and the level of these other teams, Arsenal, Man City, you could throw Chelsea in there, throw Man United in there, the lot of them, you've almost like got no chance when you try to play that way just because of the talent level. I think on the men's side of things, there's just simply less of a gap between, and some would say, well, not really, but I think there's less of a gap between where Spurs men are and the top clubs in the Premier League versus where Spurs women are and the top clubs in the WSL. And does the word pragmatism have to be shown here? Because we did see a little bit of that from Robert Villaham yesterday in this match, because they switched to a back five in the second half. Caroline, what did you make of that just from a tactical standpoint, and like trying to do something a little bit different? Is that something we need to see more of and more of an adjustment because of that gap? Or do you still want to just go all the time?
Yeah, I'm not upset with him for, making that formational change and trying something new, because I think we had really been hoping to see just a little bit of adjustment in the defense. Unfortunately, I don't think it really made much of an effect, because it feels like right now all of our center backs are pretty low on confidence, just across the board. I feel like Luana Buller, she just came back from injury, so she's actually looking pretty fresh. And she had, I would say, probably our best moments out of any of the defenders in the game. But yeah, I don't think that the switch to the back three helped us, because we just couldn't get anything going in the attack, really. Like our midfield was feeling so thin at this point. And if you're, doing this up against a team like Arsenal, who has a really quality midfield themselves, it just felt like the middle of the park was like completely Arsenal's territory. And that resulted in us having, playing with these wing backs. They were getting forward a lot, and we saw Ash Neville a lot more involved in the game than we have recently. Amanda Nilden was back from her injury. But then you've got them putting these crosses in that there's nobody there to receive them, because Beth England has been playing as much more of like a, false nine of late, and not really getting herself into those positions in the box where we would like to see her. But to be fair, I feel like Beth was really, one of our best performers on the day, and was actually trying to make things happen. But it just felt, I think it was you, Scott, who said it felt like everybody was on an island in this game. And that was definitely the case for her as well. So yeah, just feeling very disjointed, and, like you said, nobody seeming to know where everyone else was supposed to be. And I really have to chalk that up to just confidence issues, because it's not like we're playing, obviously we had the formation change in this one, but otherwise we've not really been playing too differently from how we were last season. It just feels like the players are not executing. Like the passing has just been woeful, frankly. And I don't have an answer for it in terms of, what can we do to deal with that confidence issue, except, hopefully with some games coming up against not quite as daunting opposition, we can get some momentum going. I mean, it is tough because we have a cup game next, and if we want to advance in this cup, we kind of have to take the Aston Villa game seriously because they're the biggest threat in our group. But at the same time, it might be good to have some rotation and give some of those players who are not getting a look in a chance, and see if we can identify some other options. Because certainly the team that's been starting has not really been getting it done.
As you mentioned, League Cup is next. Aston Villa is next. And as we're recording this, Aston Villa look like they're about to finish off a 2-2 draw with Crystal Palace, which will put them only 3 points back. And they are currently sitting in last place in the WSL, but only 3 points back of where Spurs are. There's a huge number of teams in between them, 4 of them, in fact. But the gap is not that big. And it is. I do think it's going to be a dogfight unless, Spurs can kick on and get something going here pretty soon in order to stave off that one relegation spot in the WSL. Any other thoughts we have from this match? Like I said, League Cup next, which is I guess a nice break. You don't have to think about league position, but the League Cup is something that you'd like to try and go for a little bit for sure.
Yeah, I would just say, as you mentioned, Caroline, the schedule, I guess, loosens up or becomes a little less daunting as we look ahead. Obviously, Aston Villa next, and then we've got Everton, we've got Palace, we've got Brighton, we've got Leicester, and then we've got Palace again. So I think those 5 matches are going to tell us a lot about what's going to happen this season. I think if we can take 10 to 12 points from those available 15, things look great. And if we drop the majority of those points, I think we know where we stand, right? Especially considering Palace are 2 of those matches. So these next 5 league matches, not including Aston Villa in the Cup, right? But these next 5 league matches will, I think, tell us everything we need to know about what's actually happening right now or throughout this season.
Yeah, and by the way, a lesson in podcasting: don't talk about games that are going on live, because Villa just got a late, what looks like, winner to defeat Crystal Palace and are going to jump up to 8th position, and Palace is going to drop down. So now the gap between Spurs and the relegation zone is not 3 points; it is 2 points. So as we are recording, that is what's happening in the WSL right now. So it's going to be a fight. It's going to be a fight for sure, but we'll see what comes of it. You guys want to talk a little bit about what was going on this week on the men's side of things? Because I'll just be honest, none of it's very good. We talked last week. I mean, despite the fact that there was no game because of the international break, we talked last week about entering an international break on a defeat. Spurs look like the walking wounded right now. And I saw a lot of graphics going around about, how many games have been lost to injury. Spurs by far lead in that category in the Premier League this season. It would appear that more has happened as Christian Romero has returned to Europe from Argentina duty following what appeared to be an injury against a match against Peru. His status is very much up in the air going forward. I did not watch any of this because I haven't really watched a lot of international football, to be perfectly honest, but so I don't know what the nature of the injury is, but it's not good, and we could be looking at a Radu Dragusin, Ben Davis center back pairing against Manchester City next week. Not sure how you feel about that, but I don't feel great. The center back thing is all of a sudden turned into what it was like last season when we had Romero go down and Van de Ven go down, and or I guess Romero had the red card against Chelsea around this time last year, and Van de Ven had the injury, and we were stuck playing some really weird center back combinations. It looks like that might be the case going forward, unless Christian Romero can make some kind of miraculous recovery. I feel like he's been playing with something for a while, and maybe this is just a re-aggravation, because we know that he was a good chance to miss the last match, but this ain't pretty, is it?
No, and I think another one of the big topics this international break has been Harry Kane's comments about, how he personally prioritizes his country over his club. And I think, it's obviously up to individual players how they feel about that. But if you look at a player like Romero, I feel like some common sense really would have benefited everybody involved in this case, because he had literally just came back from injury to play for Tottenham in the previous game when it was kind of unclear if he was going to start in the first place. It looked like he shouldn't have, frankly, because he didn't play very well. And I think the club really should have put their foot down and said, like, he's not fit to go gallivanting across, the globe to go play for Argentina. And, now we're in a situation where he could be out for who knows how long. So, yeah, obviously it's pretty clear where I stand on that, debate. I think definitely, you have to think about the fact that you're playing the majority of games for your club. And I feel like that should be the priority. But yeah, not a good situation for Romero to be in when we're already really stretched thin at that position in the first place.
Yeah, I mean, technically, if a club deems a player questionable at best or unfit to play in a match leading up to a window, you can put your foot down. So we could have not played Romero against Ipswich, and then we may not be in the situation again. It's much deeper than that, and conversations have to be had. And I have no idea if Romero would have thrown a fit if that were to happen, right? Who knows? But I'll just come out and say it. Romero is really starting to irritate me in a lot of different ways. I think he's a fantastic ball playing center back and a fantastic ball winning center back, and I think he leaves a lot to be desired when it comes to defending in the box. Every goal we've scored this year, and I don't even say that like hyperbolically, every goal we concede, comes from Romero and Porro having absolutely zero spatial awareness in the box. It's always that little quadrant between those two where we find ourselves super exposed. Palace goal, Ipswich goals, something has to be figured out there. And so I think maybe what I'm saying is we put Christian Romero up on this pedestal of being this absolutely just oozing class, world-class center back. I don't always subscribe to that theory. I think he's very talented. He's obviously won a World Cup, but Argentina is not deep at the center back position at all. And I think if they were deeper, Romero might not be like the center back that we put up on a pedestal. So I don't know. I obviously I hope that he's available. We need him. I will not be confident with Radu playing in front of Romero, but at the same time, I think I want to point out and probably just complain and moan a little bit and say that I just don't think Romero is just this fantastic world-class center back that we paint him out to be at times, because he does have plenty aspects of his game that leave us exposed, in my opinion.
There are also tons of reports out there about him potentially being linked to Real Madrid or PSG, and Spurs would want a hefty number but aren't really listening. And there's another report out there about him refusing to sign a new deal because of this. So I don't know where all of this goes or how much validity there is to any of these reports, but it certainly vibes around Christian Romero are not great right now. And I just, frankly, I agree with kind of everything you just said, Scott. Like he's a massively talented player, but this season, I don't think he has played nearly as well as he did last season. He has, I will say, and maybe this is part of it, he certainly has checked himself on the discipline, which I think is a good thing, but maybe has that taken an edge off of his game? I don't know. I think there's maybe a conversation to be had there. I know that was like a big part of the discussion around the disciplinary issues in terms of bookings. And does he almost need to do that in order to be at his highest level? Does he need to be a little bit more brash and rash, if you will, with his challenges? But I don't know. Maybe that's a conversation for another day. But like I just don't think he's been as good this season. And everything you're saying about him and Porro and the actual defending. I mean, look, he's got a goal this season. Like we've seen him get up in the box and score, and he can pass well, and we like all of that. But like this team does need a little bit more of a stalwart defensively. That is kind of when you play in the way that Spurs do with Ange Ball, like you need some solidity back there. And I hope that he can get healthy, number one, because that seems to be, I think maybe that's contributing to his poor run of form more than anything, is just he's been playing with something for quite some time. And I want him to get healthy and see him at his best. And look, if next summer rolls along and Spurs are like, we got to wash our hands of this and take what we can get and try to reset at the position, I'm not going to lose my mind, but they got to reinvest and they got to find some stalwart. I think Mickey Van de Ven on the left side, when healthy, and look, that's a whole other issue. Obviously, he's out with an injury right now too, is a really, really good piece for the future and going forward for this club. I love his speed and his ball playing ability, but on that right side, there's question marks right now with Cuti Romero, and I just think that there's more questions than there are answers, at least.
Yeah, I like you. If a significant bid comes in next summer, I would take it for Romero. I don't think he's going to sign a new deal. I'd also say if I look myself in the mirror as a Spurs fan, I say why would he? To be completely honest, I mean, we know Madrid's interested. We know Barcelona's interested. He's Spanish speaking. A lot of his compatriots play in La Liga, plenty in the Premier League too, right? But if I look at the prospects of playing for Madrid and Barcelona, who are not deep at center back, versus playing for Spurs, who lose to Ipswich and lose to Palace, I'm gone pretty quickly, right? And I'm not signing a new deal. So I would much rather get 60, 70 million for him from Real Madrid than lose him on a free. I don't think he's good enough, like a Harry Kane is, to say, fine, we need you for till every last second until you walk away from the club, right? I just don't think we're there. And we're linked to Jonathan Tah, who I think is a great center back. Tapsoba is still on the radar, who we were actually after pretty aggressively when we signed Mickey Van de Ven, right? So with two strong links there, Radu's here, Van de Ven's here. I think that the club may be already starting to think about what happens when Romero's gone, and what that looks like. So a lot to be said. And I don't even want to go down the path of talking about how do we hold on to Mickey Van de Ven when these massive clubs start knocking on the door, because that's going to happen too. But we'll save that for another pod.
Yeah, we're not barking up that tree today. I'm sorry, I can't. You're already getting into the transfer discussions, which did, of course, because there was an international break. A lot of transfer stuff was rumored this week that about a month from now is when we'll permit that here on the pod, but we're still a little ways away from the window opening. And I know how much you love transfers, Scott. And we will certainly get into some transfer business because I think they're going to need to. And that kind of parlays us into our next topic, and that's Wilson Odobert. Wilson Odobert did indeed undergo right hamstring surgery. Tottenham Hotspur has confirmed today. The 19-year-old will be monitored to determine when he can return to training, according to the club. He posted an Instagram story of himself in a hospital bed on Saturday. And yeah, not great is I guess the only thing to say here. Wilson Odobert came in this summer as I think a pretty promising prospect, a teenager who we think could be a winger for the future. And it has just not gone his way. He obviously has looked bright in the spots that he's been able to find on the pitch, but those have been few and far between. And now I don't know when we will see him or if we will see him for the rest of the season. Who knows? It could be weeks. It could be months. No real update from the club, Caroline, but this is another one that's kind of a yikes situation, because the depth at that wing spot, specifically that left wing spot, has really, really been tested this season.
Yeah, it never strikes me as a good thing when we learn about, a surgery from the player before the club tells us. And that unfortunately happens a lot with Tottenham, I feel like. So they really need to tighten that up from the social media aspect. But yeah, I feel bad for him on a personal level because, his first season at a new club, it's obviously not going the way he would have liked. But it also makes me very concerned for example, how old is he now? 32-year-old Son Heung-min having heavy minutes, because there just simply aren't a lot of reliable options. And we could probably get into the Timo of it all too, because I know there are rumors that he could be leaving early from his loan, going back to Leipzig. And I don't know. He clearly doesn't have the same like spark that he had when he first joined us on loan. So it might be for the best if he does go back early. But we just have to be realistic about the fact that we don't have enough depth at the winger position, like really on either side. And I guess part of that too is dependent upon like how soon Richie can be back, because I thought he looked pretty good when he was playing at left wing in those few games. Obviously with Solanke at striker, like it seemed to work out pretty well, but we just don't have the availability, and it's frustrating that we're kind of, it seems like, relying on our new really young Korean player to come in and get heavy minutes, and I don't feel good about that either. So because he's just played like an entire league season in South Korea, so that from a fitness perspective we could be in a pickle with him too just as quickly. So
yeah, you're reading ahead on the agenda, which is totally fine because it is all kind of related. Yes, Yang Min-hyuk is expected to join Tottenham in a few weeks here in December for training ahead of being registered in January. And when you tie it all into specifically to this left wing position where it feels like there should be so many options. You brought up Richarlison, you brought up Sonny, you brought up Timo Werner and the potential for him to be returned on loan in January, and Yang Min-hyuk coming in. I just like it. It's very much like there's so many options, but there's so many availability issues and injury issues and inexperience issues when it comes to Hyuk. And I'm very, very skeptical about any of these options. With Richarlison, for me, Richarlison has become the new Ryan Sessegnon, unfortunately. Like his best ability needs to be his availability for first and foremost, and it has not been. He's not been available. He's been just chronically hurt, which is unfortunate, and it sucks because I think we all like Richie as a guy, but he has not been able to stay healthy this season, which is unfortunate. But I agree with you, when he's been able to play out at that left wing spot with Solanke in the center, I like that potential. Sonny kind of in the same boat. He's getting up there and got to limit his playing time a little bit to an extent. And then outside of that, look, you brought up Timo Werner. Because of all of these question marks, I would actually prefer the club just hang on to Timo Werner through the January window and let the loan expire at the end of the season, because I frankly just think they're going to need the bodies. I'm not expecting Yang to come in and do much. He's going to be super inexperienced in the Premier League. We just don't know what is going to happen there. And then obviously the Odebear thing, which we've been talking about, we don't know when he's coming back. So Scott, where do you sit? Like the left wing position writ large is just like a big old grab bag of who knows what. Where do you sit with what Spurs are doing at left wing right now?
Yeah, I mean, the first thing I'll say is on Odebear, and I'm frustrated because I thought we fixed this physio issue that we had at the club, and I don't understand why it took 2 months to get to have surgery. Just this should have happened 2 months ago. We'd be 2 months further into his recovery. Bad decision from the club. But at the same time, this injury stuff is the new norm because of FIFA and modern football. I mean, Spurs are ravaged by injuries. City are decimated by injuries, and that's why they're on a 4-game spin. Arsenal's been ravaged by injuries. The only one who haven't is Man United, and they haven't played football for 2.5 years. So that's probably why they don't have an injury crisis, right? That will change as they start to play football, but it's all on international football and the Nations League, and even the increased, I don't want to start to talk about the FA because there hasn't been necessarily an increase in cup competitions and all of that, right? But it feels like what the FA could do is, as FIFA, drops their hammer and says these things are happening, the FA could maybe make adjustments too. And not to say that two wrongs make it right, but the point is there's way too much football, and this is going to continue to happen. There's really nothing we can do about it. I'm okay with Timo leaving. I know we need depth, but it's just not working. And if the club decides that's best for all parties, then I'm fine with that. I am interested in Yang Min-hyuk. I think he's a very talented player. As Carolyn said, he's played a ton of football. I know it's not transfer season yet, but I'm going to bring up a couple of links here that I'm very interested in.
Go ahead. Bring him on.
Takefusa Kubo from Real Sociedad. He comes from Real Madrid before ending up at Sociedad. Is extremely talented. 23-year-old Japanese international. Just a really, really dynamic, pacey take anyone on in a 1v1 situation, a winger. It looks like we're very strongly linked to him, us on Liverpool. And if he wants minutes, probably a starring role, come to Spurs, right?
They seem available.
Yeah. And then we're also linked to Jack Grealish pretty strongly right now, which I think would be
I saw that too, and it's so weird. It feels 8 years too late, doesn't it?
It does for sure. But looking at it from the perspective of he's been with Pep for X amount of years, he's going to come, if he were to come, this is all very hypothetical, a very talented footballer who has pedigree upon pedigree in ways that really no one at our club has, right? So I think that would be a fantastic signing. I think he'd fit into Ange's system incredibly well also, and he's very good in one-on-one situations. So if the plan is to go after Kubo and Jack Grealish, that would be a massive improvement in the squad. That would be a huge just signal to Ange that we're here to really invest in everything that he's trying to do. And that opens up wounds about the conversation we just had about investments on the women's side, right? But still, if we're looking to invest for Ange in that way, I think that's a very positive thing. So either way, I've said it all season long, until we get the winger position sorted out, we're going to struggle. It's our biggest glaring hole when you look at what we're trying to do from an Ange Postecoglou system perspective, right? And some of the defense needs to get worked out too, but statistically, we're not bleeding goals. We just give up really stupid goals that are down to individual areas, but we're not bleeding goals, right?
Well, isn't that kind of the definition, though? We're giving up stupid goals. We're bleeding them. I don't know. That feels.
But our goal differential looks good, right? And so I think like some of that can get cleaned up. But we need dynamic wingers, and we just don't have them right now in any way, shape, or form. Caroline points out in our chat here, Mikey Moore, fantastic footballer. And again, I know you agree with this. I'm not talking to you, Caroline, when I say this, but 17 years old, right? We can't, 18 maybe now, but we can't expect much from him at this point in time. We can for sure in the future. We can't expect anything from Timo Werner. We can't expect anything from Wilson Odeberry because he just had surgery. We can expect finishing from Son, but the dynamic 1v1 winger profile that we need is not Son Heung-min, in my opinion. I think he's a fantastic inside forward is the profile that I would give him, right? But he's a poacher and a finisher, and he's not that dynamic one-on-one winger. He's fantastic when he gets behind the line, scores almost every time he gets that opportunity, but he doesn't beat his man. And we just really, really, really need that profile for this system to work, and we just don't have it. So that has to be the primary focus for the January window, or we're going to continue to score him this season, in my opinion.
Mikey Moore still 17, by the way. He just turned 17 in August, so won't even be 18 until the start of next season. So it pretty remarkable talent there too, and we'll see. I'll be interested to see how much more integrated into that role perhaps that he could get as the season wears on. That'll be something certainly to watch. You mentioned like the hole in this team is certainly at winger. There could be another hole being created at least for a handful of matches going forward, because remember Rodrigo Bentancur and what he did this summer? That chicken could be coming home to roost. That cockerel could be coming home to roost. I probably could have gone that way.
Nice.
Rodrigo Bentancur is indeed, it appears, facing a 7-match ban from the FA for his racist comments this summer in regards to Sonny. We kind of have talked about this a couple of times, but it seems like this week is like, because it's an international break, this news just kind of gets brought up, and it does feel as if this is gonna happen. It's frustrating to some extent, not only because it happened, and we addressed that on a number of previous episodes, but it's also frustrating that he appears to be the only one from all the shit that went down this summer on international duty in CONMEBOL that is going to be banned because of what he did. We're not going to see a ban for Enzo Fernandez, and we're not going to see others be punished perhaps in the way that they should be. And that pisses me off, if I'm being completely honest, because I actually think Rodrigo Bentancur has had a really good season, and I think that the rotation that he and Ibasuma have shown in that defensive midfield role has actually been pretty good. I've liked what I've seen from both in the minutes that they've had. They haven't been perfect, but they've been, I think, very suitable and provide different things at different times for different types of matches. And if Spurs are going to be missing Bentancur for 7 matches, that's going to be a lot more on Yves Basuma's plate, just talking about on the field. And that's not great. I think that's going to really hurt the team and create, like I said, another hole. Maybe we see Archie Gray slot back into that role a little bit more. Perhaps that's where that coverage comes from and the depth. So that would be what I would lean to. But what do you guys think about this, just from an on the field perspective? Because like we can talk about the off the field nature of it and everything when we have done, but like just from an on the field perspective and losing Bentancur for 7 games, how's that affect this club? Because I think it really, really hurts them.
Yeah, I do think this could be a good opportunity for Archie Gray, because Angela's been talking about how, despite utilizing him in other roles, he does think that is his best position, and he has all the qualities to succeed there. So to me, this is a perfect opportunity to actually see that play out. Of course, it's not a perfect opportunity in the sense that, Bentancur had started to pick up some form, but, like we talked about in the past when this first happened, like, play stupid games, get stupid results. He's got to take the punishment, and that's what it is. I understand the frustration from a lot of people about the fact that, for example, Enzo Fernandez not getting any sort of punishment, and in fact being made Chelsea captain, which is still wild to me. But, we can only talk about our player, and what's happening with him. And I don't think, just because those other players aren't getting punished doesn't mean that he shouldn't either. Like, that's not how it works. There have to be consequences. But also CONMEBOL, horrible confederation, totally useless.
Yes. Yeah. I fully support this ban. I'm totally on team. Sure, it may hurt the club, but tough shit. Don't say stupid shit. You guys know I have problems supporting guys who have shown poor character in past. I started a save in FC 2024 with Tottenham, and the first thing I do is sell Basuma and Bentancur because I just can't have corrupt personalities in my squad, right? So I fully support this ban, and whatever, we'll have to just figure it out, because what he did was stupid and unacceptable. And there's all kinds of, well, you know what, we're not going to talk about the off-field stuff because we've done it, but whatever happens on the field, the club has to get through it, and Bentancur needs to watch his club score because of the choices he made. I do think Archie Gray will for sure get minutes at the 6. I'm excited to see that. I think he's an uber talented player. He's shown his quality on the ball in droves at right back this season. Again, the 6 comes with significantly more pressure than right back does when you're on the ball, right? So it remains to be seen how he'll fare at 18 years old in the Premier League. But and on that note, Bentancur is available for Europa League, right? So we're just talking 7 matches in the Premier League right now, which is where, again, Archie Gray is going to have to pick up the slack. So whatever, we'll get through it. Jet Spence should be back soon to cover at right back, which will help. Probably cover at left back too. We're a little bit depleted there, but ultimately we'll just have to find a way through. And I think Archie Gray will be a big piece of that.
I hope Jed Spence is back. I feel like we've been hearing Jed Spence should be back for like the last 3 or 4 weeks, and obviously he can't play in the Europa League. So I hope that's something. You talked about the physios earlier, but like, my goodness, that feels like a thing that's lingered as well. Sorry, Caroline, I cut you off there.
Well, no, like, on that note, he's been in the match day squad for a couple of games, right? Or did I hallucinate that?
Yeah, he has been.
Yeah.
I'm not sure he has actually. I'd have to.
He's been on the bench, I'm pretty sure.
At least the last one, yeah. So I was surprised that he didn't get any minutes in that game, honestly. But the last thing I wanted to say on Archie Gray is I think the fact that he has been playing at different positions is going to help him in this new role, because he's going to have a greater awareness of, where he needs to be covering to help his teammates who are back in the fullback and center back positions. So this could end up being a good thing for our defense, to be honest. Obviously we'll have to see how it plays out. And if he can kind of take that leap to be a really such an important position on the pitch in terms of like controlling the tempo, keeping the midfield sturdy. Like I hope he's going to be up to the task, but only time will tell.
Yeah, I just double checked, and you're right. I stand corrected. He was in the Spence was in the match day squad for Ipswich, but not for the Villa match before that. He obviously wouldn't have been for the Galatasaray match because he's once again, not registered in Europa League for some damn reason, but he was in the matchday squad for Ipswich and did not see the pitch. So I'll be interested to see what he has coming back. But yeah, there's plenty. Gray's the one I'm most interested in because, like you said, Scott, he's been good wherever he's played. I mean, hell, he's played left center back, he's played left back, he's played right back. He can play in the 6. I love his versatility. I love him on the ball. I want to see him. He's also a guy that has been playing like grown man football for a while and should be expected to be able to come in and at least provide something. And I'll be interested to see him going forward, coming out of this international break, see what he can do to help fill in. We're not done talking about off-field stuff, unfortunately, Scott. I know we don't want to like continue to talk about FA stuff, but something that I'll note our friends from Cartilage Free Captain wrote about this week is that Tottenham have been charged with 2 breaches by the FA for the homophobic chants from away support at the Manchester United match in late September. This was sent out in a tweet earlier this month, which I missed, but there were, in fact, homophobic chants. The club condemned them in the moments after the match was completed, and the FA has stepped in. Probably going to be a hefty fine for the club, which rightfully so. We just want to note it because Spurs and the FA right now are seemingly intertwined with all of these different things, and it's obviously not good. Very, very bad form from our away support, and we don't want to see it, and we want to kick all that stuff out. I also saw it was the Rainbow Laces campaign was in full effect for the WSL this weekend. That was noted on the broadcast, which I thought was good. And I guess that's going to be going forward this week too into Premier League matches. But this was very, very bad form from our fans, from our supporters. And frankly, if you're going to football matches to chant shit like this, you're not really supporting anything. You're just a hateful asshole. So I'll put that out there. But Caroline, did you look like you had something to chime in on this?
Well, no, just I was surprised to learn that it was the Rainbow Laces game for the women's North London Derby, because I felt like it had not really been advertised, leading up to the game in the way that I feel we usually see on the men's side, which is a little strange to me.
Right, sure.
But I think campaigns like this, it's tough because obviously they do serve a purpose, but I think if they're not getting the proper visibility, then maybe that needs to be improved upon. But it's kind of different in the women's game also, because we know it's a totally different ball game, so to speak. And I feel like it's much more of an issue in the men's game, homophobia right now. And I think, with this charge from the FA, that's just the process working the way it's supposed to. And I think it's good that the club were like very immediately condemning the chants, doing exactly what they're supposed to do. So it's just, you've got to raise the awareness. And unfortunately, if it takes a fine like this, then that's got to be part of it.
Yeah, the only thing I'll say is, obviously, I'm very glad that we were fined. I think if it would have gone unpunished, it'd feel a bit gross. But I also don't think a fine does anything to change the minds or the opinions of those who participated in those chants. They'll probably honestly say, "Good, Levy, pay your fine, right? You're cheap, blah blah blah," and not to paint anyone who's anti-Levy into this homophobic category, but. My only point is, and if we want real change, you deduct points from the football club. That's the only way that fans will actually be impacted, right, by the choices that they make. They could care less about a fine that Daniel Levy, who's super rich, has to pay, or the club, rather, Enoch, right, who's super rich, has to pay. So I'm glad that things are being done. But I personally, as a fan, this type of stuff is disgusting, and I'd be fine with us being deducted points for the choices that our away fans are making. But yeah, we'll see. Hopefully more progress is made.
Well, and the other thing you have to do, in my opinion, is when you positively ID folks who are doing this, it's a lifetime ban. You're never coming back to a football game.
No question.
Ever again. Like, I don't care. Like, there should be a no tolerance policy for this kind of stuff. It should be, as bad as the folks who run onto the pitch, like, just get them out forever. Because if you don't know how to behave, then get out, get the fuck out of here. I don't need that in my game.
100%. And unfortunately, you look at this post-COVID nationalistic way of the world that we're moving towards, with obviously Trump being elected here, and we all know what's been going on in England for the last few years, and we just live in a world where this type of stuff is supported and glorified, and it's going to continue to be a problem. So at least from the perspective of football, serious repercussions have to happen for anything to get better. I mean, it's too bad that we can't just all be good people, but it's we're going to need to see more than fines is my point here. So bans, like you're saying, and point deductions are the way that continues to make strides, I think.
Well, and honestly, my impression that I got, after this game was that it was pretty widespread in the away stand. So I think at that point you just say, okay, you don't get away fans for your next fixture.
Yeah.
And that's going to frustrate the fans who were behaving properly. And that's going to create the social pressure that's going to actually make change, because they're going to be churning to their, seatmate the next time this happens and saying, you have to stop this. You're going to get us all banned. It's not acceptable. And, it's like you said, Scott, it would be nice if everybody was just a nice, kind person. We wouldn't have these issues, but sometimes you just need a little bit of that, like, oh yeah, I'm going to get in trouble for this. To get people to behave properly, even if they don't, agree with it. And that's sad for them if they want to live their life that way, but there should still be consequences.
Yeah.
Man, I feel like this podcast has been a lot of downer news, kind of like last week's podcast. But at least we get to look forward, guys, to next week, where Spurs travel north to face a very struggling and defeated Manchester City at the Etihad. Manchester City has, of course, lost 4 straight matches, which started with Spurs defeating them in the League Cup a few weeks back, that 2-1 win, then spiraled into City going and losing to Bournemouth in the Premier League in their next match. Then they went on the road to Sporting and lost 4-1 in the Champions League. And then their last match before the international break was a 2-1 defeat away to Brighton. This will be the first home match for Man City since a 1-0 win over Southampton on October 26th. They have lost 4 straight. So at least Spurs have City right where they want them, right? They're going to go up there and continue this run of form for City, right? Yeah? No? Any confidence in that? No?
We're getting absolutely smoked. Let's just come out and say it. We are going to get run over in this match. That's all I have to say.
I don't know. Weirdly, I always look forward to when we play City, because something interesting will happen. It might not be good. Sometimes it is, though. Like this is a team that we weirdly have a good record against. So and they're still without Rodri. We have to remember that, their most important player, arguably. Our injury situation is not great, so that makes me feel less confident. But you never know. Like, Sonny likes to show out against them. Kulusevski, this is one of his favorite teams to play. So you never know.
We got to remember that Erling Haaland did not play in that League Cup fixture a few weeks ago as well. Him going up against a center back pairing of Radu Dragusin and Ben Davis literally sends chills down my spine. This could indeed get ugly, but look, you go up there and you give it a go. It's a free hit, in my opinion. I mean, Scott, you've been saying all along, all the league matches are free hits, right? Like this is the ultimate definition of that.
If this is a cup match, I'd be very invested, but it's probably going to be what it is. I mean, Erling Haaland, he has a gap between Udogie and Davies, a gap between Davies and Dragusin, a gap between Dragusin and Porro to just feast. Their defensive issues are going to be on display big time for Spurs in this match, in my opinion. And when you look at the way that we deploy our fullbacks, when you look at how good Savio and Mateus Nunes have been for them, I suspect that we're probably in for it, and Erling Haaland's gonna have a day. But I could be wrong. Like Caroline said, we just really strange things happen when Spurs play City. So there could always be that chance that I'm wrong, and I'd welcome that.
And I would rather be facing Erling Haaland than Bunny Shaw any day. So it all balances out.
True that.
That is truer words never spoken. My goodness. At least maybe City can get Bunny Shaw into this match too. Like that would really stick it in Spurs craw. My goodness.
I just started thinking, like, what if they did some initiative where they combined men's and women's teams and created like a little tournament, and you had to face Erling and Bunny in a front two? It would be.
Thank you.
That's a nightmare.
I would refuse to play in that match if I was on the opposition. I would just fake an injury or something like that.
No, thank you. I'm gonna be good on that. That is gonna do it for this edition of the Tottenham Depot. Be sure to check out our episodes on our YouTube page if you're not already. You can watch every episode on youtube.com/Tottenham Depot and leave us a rating and review on your podcast app of choice to help spread the word about the show. As I mentioned earlier, we are still on all the socials. I know a lot of you are migrating over to Blue Sky. We are there. We're trying to get it a little bit more active, get some more of a following there. Twitter, X, Instagram, Threads, all the different spots you can find us is at Tottenham Depot, where you can also reach out to us via email, which is in our bio. You can follow Caroline at CG Stefko. You can follow Scott at Scott G Bird. Follow me at A Stedka. We'll be back next week to recap whatever the hell happens in these two matches for both the men and women. As you know, we continue to roll along here in another season of very, very fun Tottenham Hotspur football, and very, very hopefully the topics are a little more fun in the coming weeks, because these last two episodes, it's been all bad news. We're going to try and turn it around and have some good news going forward, but we will talk to you next week. This has been the Tottenham Depot podcast. As always, come on, you Spurs.